Welcome to the BS Report. This one we're covering the topics of who do you trust? Do you trust a badge, a felon, a fired IDOC employee? Um, the answer is pretty simple in this day and age, right? The bro, trust me, has passed. Don't trust anyone. We all have agendas. Um, the badges have agendas, felons have agendas, and of course I have agendas. So let's start at the top. Should you trust officers of the law? Well, before I get into this and totally bore you, I want to keep your attention for just a moment or two longer and say, hey, this is also about your friends and family that are in jail and or prison right now. I want you, the viewer, to hear me clearly on this. If you have friends or family or loved ones that have just entered the realm of IDOC and they've been telling you some things that you're thinking to yourself, that cannot possibly be true, please listen to them. They may have lied to you all of your life, and at this point, they're just being held accountable, right? And you're thinking they're just complaining. Well, this is what IDOC and the jail wants you to believe. Your ambivalence towards the incarcerated is what they count on. After all, they are the criminals. They have been convicted in a court of law by highly educated people. So the system is working perfectly, right? Well, they're a criminal. So it is normal to believe what you are thinking. So they may just truly be complaining, but you need to give them some space to say what it is they are seeing. And especially so, and I cannot emphasize this enough, especially so if it's their first time being in trouble like this and they're in prison. Let me say it again. If they've never been in prison before, in Idaho specifically, and you're hearing some crazy stuff, you need to listen. So why? Well, think of it like this. They are like a baby who is growing up and seeing the world through innocent eyes. And so they are asking questions and they're being told to shut up, mind their own business, all the while they're wondering, is this even right? Is this normal or okay? This is why you listen. They are your baby who does not understand. And you know how kids say things that you're just like, wow, where did that come from? Because they don't understand how things work, and they're like, I would never have thought of that. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Only in this case, these babies are actually adults who've been in the world for some time, and so they have some context on things, and they do also have an idea of what is right and what is wrong. Do not discount what they're saying, please. When they tell you stuff that just seems to be made up or wrong, it is not. You need to believe them, ask questions, and see if you can help them with one key thing in mind. IDOC does not want this. They do not want you to help the people who are incarcerated, and you should know that your help may actually endanger them. They may be hurt, and this includes right up to death, because IDOC makes examples out of those who speak out. Keep that in mind, and be upfront with them that you are now concerned for their safety and work on a plan to keep them safe. Please. Okay, moving on. So I worked for IDOC for almost 7 years and watched IDOC kill somebody, deny offenders medical treatment, and lie about what they would do. On top of all that, they would deny those who cannot advocate for themselves their basic human rights. So please listen. This could be life or death for them, literally. All right, now officially back to the regular programming. We were speaking about trusting officers of the law. Those with the badges control all the information that gets out of prison and maintain an iron fist on that control. IDOC literally utilizes the threat of termination, harm, and or worse. This is a culture that Idaho Department of Corrections has. There was a recent article about IDOC interfering with offender mail. That part wasn't what was notable. What was notable wasn't the focus of IDOC on addressing and trying to fix the problem from information that was gathered from public release of information. What was interesting was their focus not on the problem, but on the person trying to get the problem solved. So ask yourself why that is. Riley Shoemaker, she did that article, Channel 6 News, so you can check that out. And we've all heard the saying. The saying is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The majority of IDOC staff is not trustworthy. Of those who are, there may be 2 out of that 10, with that number leaning towards 1, unfortunately. Why? Why would I say that? Well, you have seen what happens with staff reports when they are seeing what happens and leadership does not like it. Go ahead and check out my video on the Woodland conspiracy. I reported what I was seeing, was gaslighted and ignored, in the end never spoken to about it. Under oath, Gretchen Woodland actually testified that she did not have to respond to my email. And when I asked for more guidance and help, my leadership took active steps, to silence my voice and concerns and hid the fact that drugs were in the facility, in the community, and that IDOC leadership was not only aware of it, but they were okay with that. And again, you can also look at the videos on the denial, if I can speak, of medical care. So even if there are trustworthy staff at IDOC, they see what is happening to their fellow coworkers and look the other way because they know if they do say something or try to do something, they will be made an example of. They are incentivized to not look. Say nothing, do nothing, and then you get your pay, you get your pension, and you get promoted. And you get promoted because you're being a great team player. That's a pretty sweet deal, right? Well, IDOC has a problem. They promote their friends and family and only promote those who go along. That's called being a good team member. I know firsthand because there are multiple married and unmarried teams employed within the department, which also contributes to these problems. So you have no independence there. And make no mistake, about IDOC, security runs things. They run the prison, and it is they who almost get promoted exclusively, even into non-security spots. So what does one expect? Once again, the state of Idaho has lowered the standards for being a security officer in the prisons to just be breathing. Seriously, IDOC now hires people who cannot even read and promote them because they are related to their families. And if you were unaware what I'm referring to, the age to work as a security officer within the IDOC prisons is 18. And that would be okay if it was a nurturing and healthy environment within this prison system, but obviously it is not. There are no ethics or morals or standards within IDOC, except for one, and that is to protect themselves above all costs and exploit those that they look over. That is the way of IDOC. It also needs to be addressed that IDOC is a criminal enterprise which is paid for by the Idaho taxpayers. IDOC has zero accountability and goes to great lengths to hide what is happening in the name of security. Go ahead and look at their Facebook and Instagram. You will see that comments and questions are blocked. This has been the case now for some time. An interview recently done by IDOC provides information, but zero actual documents supporting their statements. That article where the director speaks about drones bringing in stuff to the prisons, are you tracking it? Or are you just making this up? That recent escape, which resulted in the deaths of 2 innocent people, happened because of IDOC staff who were bringing in contraband, which was given to the offender population. The easiest way to break into any system, prison, technology, etc., is staff. And because, as I mentioned earlier, breathing is all that they want or require, IDOC staff is not just easily compromised, but staff is looking for those opportunities to make money, have sex, get drugs, you name it. So, yeah, you can compromise IDOC literally tomorrow in less than 20 hours. IDOC will then, of course, blame the offenders and take zero accountability themselves. The image that IDOC tries to paint using the papers and social media to tell their stories is decidedly false, and it's a veneer of misinformation that when you start looking at it clearly, it just rubs right off. Their Facebook and Insta pages paint an intentionally deceptive picture of what IDOC is. Look at their faces. Those are the faces of people who are okay with denying offenders their medical treatment. Look at those faces. Those staff are okay to look the other way while offenders are being raped, not just by staff, but by other offenders. Oh, but if it's consensual, they're okay with that too. These are faces of evil. These are what faces of people who actively harm innocents look like. And yes, in this instance, the offenders are the ones who are innocent. And all they can do is endure the harm which is doled out by such a corrupt system. Do you, viewer, expect that those coming out of Idaho prisons, and when they're released, do you think they will be better or worse people because of their experiences? Now, I want you, viewer, to hear me again clearly on this. If you have family or loved ones currently in the realm of IDOC and they've been telling you stuff that you're thinking to yourself, this just cannot be, listen to them and work on a plan. Or you can contact me. I will help you with a plan because their safety is paramount. And the state of Idaho has quite clearly decided that they are okay with any harm that comes to them in prison. So don't trust me. Don't trust what I say on this channel. Trust what I am showing, what I've done, and what I'm doing. This is what you should trust. So, what about the felons? Should you trust them? What do you think the answer is? Absolutely not. When it comes to felons, you do one thing. You do not trust what they say. You trust their actions. You trust what you see. And when it comes to felons, things, of course, are more gray. So I'm asking that you not trust, but that you ask a ton of questions. And you know what? Felons will actually answer your questions. You know who will not answer your questions? IDOC. Do you see a slight problem with that? So who is avoiding things? It's those with the badge, whether it's stitched on or it's an actual one. And you have to ask yourself, why are they avoiding these questions? An entity that is okay, and I know I'm repeating myself again, but an entity that is okay with violating a person's basic human rights does not mind taking their future from them too, when all offenders are mostly attempting trying to do is do their time and restart their lives again. That's not going to happen in IDOC. Listen to what the offenders, the inmates, the residents, whatever name you want to give them, they have a story to tell, and they want you to see what they're seeing. As a society and a state here in Idaho, we cannot expect anyone to come out of prison which exploits that population. Idaho citizens have trusted IDOC to rehabilitate them, and they are literally violating our trust as we speak. And then, of course, there's me, Brian. Do you trust what I'm saying? Should you? I've been hearing stories coming out of IDOC for a bit now about myself. It's not surprising considering what's happened to me. But they are saying things like he was compromised, he was groomed, he's a conspiracy theorist. This is what IDOC does. This is the way. If anyone speaks out against them, they will go to great lengths to discredit, harm, and even lie. And they've done all those things to me. You do not, however, have to believe anything that I have to say. But I would encourage you to take some time and look at some of the video. Take a look at some of the unedited audio, the emails that I posted. Take a look. And when I was working, I was like any other staff member who would hear things that was happening to the offenders. I would just pass it up the chain and be told they were lying. And that's where things would end. The problem that I started to have was that there were two stories being told. And over time, as I asked more questions, questions were answered by one party, and the other party would refuse to answer my questions and would remain silent. Any idea on who it was who would refuse to answer my questions? The lack of transparency within IDOC while I was working at IDOC, and then the intentional misdirection and lies began to tell me a story that I could not ignore. And what I was being told by my leadership, or what they wished I would hear, it just didn't add up. So I had to start giving more credence to the stories that I was hearing from the offender population, because something was up. And then again, I saw it firsthand with Kevin Sagayo. Now, not to repeat the story yet again, I was brand new with IDOC. So was I compromised from literally day one? Had I been groomed by the offender population in less than 6 months of work? Was I a staff member that had just gotten hired and believed in conspiracies? Or did I see from my own eyes someone dying and I took steps to help this person and I did so no matter what? In hindsight, I had time in a healthy space, workplace, I would have actually been able to save Mr. Sagayo. I believe that completely. But instead, I walked into an incredibly toxic and hostile environment, and this was written. I want to read to you what was in my initial evaluation as I took my steps to try to save Mr. Sagayo. He has, at times, stepped into areas that are assigned to other staff, either based on intentional efforts to help out or because of unfamiliarity with which clients are assigned to his caseload. This has at times created some degree of conflict or confusion among inmates and or staff. So I have to laugh when I read this. Confusion with staff. You know what was confusing with staff back then and even still today? Is that anyone would actually try to help an offender. And that's what I did. And I did that in spite of that report that was written about me. I did that in spite of how I was treated. And this was not incompetence, as some have said about IDOC. This was a deliberate thing and actions taken, which makes it criminal. I documented what was happening, and I documented the steps that occurred that I took. So there is no question. IDOC killed Kevin Sagayo. Now, do you believe in the multiverse theory? I know this is a little bit of a tangent. Well, if so, in an alternate reality, I would have received some award for saving his life by bringing this situation to the attention of staff who somehow I'm the only one who recognized what was happening. So I brought it forth and everybody was like, wow, we missed it. So glad you started. Nice job. But instead, this is what happened. Instead, I had a staff and leadership who were only concerned about looking good and took active steps to cover up everything. And instead of acting with haste and purpose to address the issues of Mr. Sagayo, they let him die. He'd be here if they had done anything, but they chose not to. So in this reality, with IDOC, as they are today, I was told I was doing it wrong. Wow. So again, you do not have to believe me at all. You can look at the reports that I've written, the actions that I've taken. When did it become a full-out war on IDOC's part against me? Well, there are a few things, but I believe it was when I finally learned what they were doing, protecting staff at the cost of safety of the community and of the offenders, and I started bringing in outside investigators into the prisons. I think that's when things turned. In one particular situation, I had a woman tell me about her friends who just happened to be police. And I may have mentioned this previously, but how she was describing things sounded off. And so I began talking to her, investigating more of what she was saying, because it just didn't quite add up. At this point in my career, this is what leadership had been doing and not doing around me. They had covered up PREA between offenders and staff. They had covered up PREA between offenders, male and female, female and female. They were harassing me at this time weekly, if not daily, both in person and via meetings and emails. They had actively worked to suppress, hide the drugs that were being used in the work center that I was reporting, which was endangering staff and the general public, and of course the offenders. Again, go back to the Woodland conspiracy. Also, I was reporting what was happening, and I was asking for help during this period of time from upper management about being in a hostile and toxic uh, workplace, and I was getting only silence. So this was all happening at the same time, and so I was not about to turn this situation over to the investigators who were actively working against the safety of the public, safety of the offenders, and the safety of staff. So I brought in investigators from the county to investigate this woman's claims and learned that they, this county and staff slash officers, have been raping this woman for quite a while, and not just her. What were the results of this investigation? One of the officers ran, they left the state, and the others were charged. And they finally caught up to that guy who took off too. So I think this probably was the last straw for IDOC. So I was put on leave in September of 21, and I actually figured, delusionally, that they would read the ridiculous things on my paperwork and reinstate me in 30 days. And I would have had a nice period of time off and could have, restarted what I was doing. That obviously did not happen. So if you watch some of the other videos, you will see in my paperwork that they fabricated events, and in some cases, they just outright lied. And when I addressed it at my hearings, which took place over 3 days, and in my appeal as well, not one person cared. Not one. So it was all allowed to stand. So you can go to the Idaho Personnel Commission website and read exactly what they said. And it's pretty interesting. My story has remained the same. I spoke out about staff safety, for the safety of the offenders, and for the safety of the public. IDOC staff and leadership came after me when I refused to work security shifts as a case manager with no training, no tools, and no additional pay. After I told them no, they wrote me up saying I was unprofessional. You can actually hear the actual audio on this channel where I did indeed tell them no, and when I left, I sought more help, which never came. In fact, my HR representative at that time ghosted me. So then after about a year or so of being pressured, bullied, and harassed by IDOC to do those shifts, which they did so again in person, email, drop-by office visits, etc., I submitted a proposal to train and pay non-security staff, a proposal that was rejected. To this day, I'm actually thankful that I did not work any shifts of security because I was, after all, classified as a case manager. I continued to talk to people, and as I learned new things, I learned just what security was doing to those offenders. This included raping them, extorting them, pressuring them for favors. I would have been even at greater risk of harm and danger because I would report and refuse what was going on, as I had always done. So, do you trust me? Don't. You do not have to. Believe instead the reports that I have been documenting of the events. Believe those who are coming forward, who are saying what is happening in their own voices. Believe that this is actually occurring. Or you do not have to believe anything. There's a recent article that says Idaho may be becoming a more violent state. Contributing to this is a system of rehabilitation that does not rehabilitate, but instead actually harms those society has entrusted. This is not going to make possible a reform when it's being done by criminals. And again, you don't have to believe any of this, but you may want to pay attention. This is the BS Report. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you noticed at the very beginning, you can now subscribe anonymously for your safety. Because as you are aware, IDOC will come after you. Be safe.